It's literally a perfect fountain, and I just thought it was too cool not to mention because I guarantee it's never gonna come up in a myth section.
Hey, man, I appreciate your use of discretion with that. Those are dope.
I'm gonna eat my words when 3 books from now, Percy's like, "But before I could fight Kronos, I had to drink of the sacred milk from the fountain."
I had to drink the infinite milk. That's right.
Hello, and welcome to Notes from the Oracle. I'm Connor, and together with Jack, my co-host from Cabin 6, we're going into uncharted waters as we explore the monstrous mythology of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Book 2, The Sea of Monsters. Chapter 4, Tyson Plays with Fire. Which, I'm gonna say, not a bad title, but after the last 3, definitely feels like a step down. We had 3 really solid titles before this.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a bad title. I, however, don't think it properly encapsulates the chapter in the most interesting way that it could.
Yeah,
Tyson playing with fire, air quotes, is probably one of the least interesting parts of this entire chapter, truthfully.
I agree. It almost feels like this might have been a holdover title that was maybe like the working title for the Lystragonians chapter.
Right.
And then Rick came up with a better one for that chapter and was like, put it on chapter 4, whatever.
Mhm.
Moving on. Hit the
Right.
chapter title. I know I can write the chapter, but it's a
Now
really
I can do
fun
that.
chapter. I don't know about you. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty fun. It's a neat set piece chapter.
Mhm.
I would compare it most similarly to in book 1, the Chimera and Echidna fight.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
Same kind of, it's very action-packed, an interesting environment that they're fighting in. Maybe not because it's as enclosed and isolated as the Arch, but because they're fighting in a place that is of great importance. It's very profound that there is a fight happening there.
Mhm.
I thought it was neat. I thought it was neat. I
I
don't know
agree.
that this is gonna stand the test of the prior chapters or even other chapters. I think I could find myself kind of forgetting about this one as the book goes on, but we'll see.
That I definitely agree with. I guess when I said I really enjoyed this chapter, that's maybe a bit of an overstatement because it does feel like we've had 3 very good chapters, and this continues that trend, but it's also not as frenetic as the
Mhm.
previous chapter. The 3 Gryai have such a comedic energy about them, whereas this is just a pretty standard Percy Jackson fight. It's just a
Mhm.
very well executed standard Percy Jackson fight, especially in that if you do want to compare to the Chimera chapter, because I think that is kind of a fair comparison of interesting set piece. The big difference is that one you have to go through the wind up of getting to St. Louis and getting to the Arch, which I know very much frustrated you, and certainly to me was also like this, it just rubs me the wrong way. It doesn't feel right. Whereas this chapter, we skip all the preamble and we dive right into Clarisse is up there commanding some soldiers and people are in trouble. Get
Yeah.
your ass out there and help, which really speeds things up and makes it feel more like it's easier to get invested in. There's nothing dragging about it. There's no really why would you make that choice? Everything they do makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. This chapter does continue the trend of this book of the pacing staying very consistent, but staying very fast as
Yeah.
well.
When you read it as a book, you just rip through the first 50 pages and you're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
that was great." When you go the week to week, suddenly the chapters really start to feel like, "Okay, we actually kind of need something to slow down a little bit here." So I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to the next chapter being a little longer and slowing things down. But with that being said, I think it's time to get started on this chapter.
let's do it.
So Percy starts off with saying, mythologically speaking, if there's anything I hate worse than trios of old ladies, it's bulls. Which, speaking of bull, that's bullshit. Anything? Not like the Chimera, not like Luke, or the Scorpion, or Ares.
The
Bulls?
scorpion.
Okay, but like, think about it. Percy has terrible luck with venomous creatures. He is constantly getting poisoned. And he's like, Man, you know what I hate? Bulls.
I mean, the first bull that he fought did basically kill his mom.
You know, that is true. But, like, he got her back. I thought I'd forgive it by now.
No, I feel like that's still pretty traumatic and scarring. First, if you were to ask him point blank, "Hey, what's more dangerous?" He'd say, "Oh, it's probably not those things." But in terms of personal dislike, I think that's actually very fair. And the Bulls, again, one basically killed his mom. Even if she got better, I feel like I'd still be kind of pissed at him.
That's valid. See, and I was thinking, you know what? I would look at this and be like, it's those fuck ass nereids and centaurs and other nature spirits that don't fucking tell me things.
Yeah, I don't know that Percy's smart enough to really understand that. He's smart enough to ask the questions, but he's not smart enough to be angry at him not getting the answer.
That's very valid. But lo and behold, yes, the problem is more bulls at the beginning of this book. And they're not just regular bulls, they are bronze bulls the size of elephants. And naturally, they had to breathe fire too. Interesting, mythologically accurate. I'm here for it.
Cool. Yeah, I just think they're neat.
Yeah, they're a good monster. They're a good monster for an interesting fight.
They're dropped off. The moment that Annabeth Tyson and Percy exit the Grey Sisters cab, he says they peeled away, heading back to New York, where life was safer, which I found funny.
Yeah, they didn't even wait for their extra 3 drachma payment, which I think only reinforces the Trials of Apollo retcon that they
Mm,
didn't care about the extra 3. They were just in it for the vibes, for the
yeah.
drama,
Mhm. I like that. It makes a lot of sense. Good retcon.
right? It really does. But they're seeing the fight, they're getting ready. The description of these 3 is something to behold. Annabeth with nothing but her backpack and knife. Tyson and me still in our burned up tie-dye gym clothes. If they don't recreate that perfectly in the new season of the show when it comes out, I'm going to be so disappointed.
I do love this underdog motif that they've got right now. They are so clearly underprepared. And I think that's what is another aspect that I found really, really fun within the first few chapters. Everything that's happened, Percy has had to react. He has not had time to prepare. It has
Mhm.
been entirely by the skin of his teeth, pure instinct, and it just continues into this. And also, again, not giving them a leg up. They don't have time to arm themselves. They don't have time to get their bearings. They just got done peeling at like Mach 5 down Long Island and are now facing again these giant mech bulls. And they're seeing their friends who are there are losing too. That's the
Yeah.
other interesting thing. This is not a glorious battle in which the soldiers of Camp Half-Blood, the demigod, are really holding their own. They are trying their best, and they are on the back foot.
Yeah. I loved Rick's little the 10 heroes in full battle armor were getting their bronze-plated booties whooped.
Mhm.
It's just fun. And it's a good way to describe it. It sets the scene. It doesn't say, oh, it was a tough fight, but the demigods were holding their own despite looking ragged and tired. No, they are getting their asses handed to them by these bulls.
Yeah. Yeah, and that little bit of humor is followed by just a horrifying concept.
Mm-hmm.
What worried me was the bulls were ranging all over the hill, even around the backside of the pine tree. That shouldn't have been possible. The camp's magic boundaries did not allow monsters to cross past Dahlia's tree, but the metal bulls were doing it anyway. Like, uh-oh, that's like the one thing that made Camp Half-Blood safe, and it's not working?
Book 2, safest place for demigods, baby. No
Yeah.
monsters ever. No minotaurs, no pit scorpions, no hellhounds. Wait a minute.
And, like, we get to see, like, all right, who are these people? Who are the front lines of Camp Half-Blood? Who's gonna be there? What is the defense now that this magical barrier seemingly is not working? Percy looks up upon the hill, and one of the heroes shouts out, "Border Patrol, to me!" It's a girl's voice. It's gruff, familiar. And again, Percy's now starting to think the little hamster wheel in his head is turning. Border Patrol? The camp didn't have a border patrol. Again, because it didn't need one.
Mm-hmm.
Annabeth points out, in case you couldn't guess, from that gruff female voice, it's Clarisse. We've got to help her.
And that makes perfect sense. I love that detail. Clarisse is exactly the type of character that you don't want to like at any point, especially
Mhm.
coming out of book one. She's a real dick to Percy in that book. But if there was a need for a border patrol to defend Camp Half-Blood, she's a full-time camper.
Yeah.
And she never at any point is like, oh, we trust Luke. Book one, she's like, if there's a traitor, I'll fucking kill him.
Hmm.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Give him to me and I will rip his head off. And so it makes a lot of sense. This is her home. She would defend it tooth and nail.
Yeah. And she is. She is absolutely doing that. And I think we'll talk about it more as the chapter goes on. But I really do love some of the characterization we see of Clarisse throughout this
Mhm.
chapter. Like, is she still a raging bitch? Absolutely, she is. But this is one of those situations where it's also like, damn, this terrible person does have some beneficial aspects. I kind of see why we keep her around.
Yeah. She's going to be a bigger player in this novel. And so I do think that this scene is inserted, this chapter is inserted purely to give us, the readers, a reason to like is maybe a strong word for it, but respect Clarisse. To have some level of understanding that she is another demigod that is worth having around, worth having
Mhm.
on your side.
Yeah. And Percy is, of course, being very brave, but also recognizing, damn, I hate this person. I
Yup.
usually would not rush in to help Clarisse in any situation, truthfully. She's a huge bully. She tried to give me a fucking swirly, and then I reversed it on her. She beat my ass during Capture the Flag, and then I beat her ass. And also, she's a daughter of Ares. Her dad is a dickhead, had a big disagreement with him. And so, by proxy, she's also even less of a fan of me because of that. And the feeling's mutual. She hated my guts, and truthfully, I hate her guts. But he sets that aside. He says, we need to have camper solidarity here. This is an existential threat to a place that I love, and she is fighting for that same place, and she's in trouble. It also does not help the fact that, again, and Rick really reiterates, the 10 people that are there alongside Clarisse, not doing great. They're
Not
really
cutting it.
kind of dropping the ball.
Yup.
Percy says her fellow warriors were scattering. Not a good thing for warriors to do. They're running in panic as the bulls charged. The grass was burning in huge swaths around the pine tree. And then, notably, one hero screamed and waved his arms as he ran in circles, the horsehair plume on his helmet blazing like a fiery mohawk. Which, stop, drop, and roll, or take the helmet off. In any event, really not the camp's best out here. Unfortunately, Clarisse is not working with the brightest and strongest that Camp Half-Blood has to offer.
Yeah, I read that and I was like, all right, so this guy is definitely not from Ares or Athena cabin. Because
Oh, I was
Ares
thinking like
cabin,
Hermes.
they're wearing that helmet and they are charging in head flaming. Athena cabin, they're going, maybe I can just remove the flaming
Take it
vestige.
off.
Wow, that was easy.
Also, what good is this helmet gonna be against a fucking elephant-sized metal bull? If anything, the helmet would probably be worse. Presumably, as a bull, if they're not goring people, they're bludgeoning into them, they're gonna cave that helmet in. You do
Yep.
not want that. That's like the worst thing that can happen.
But alas, that guy's running around and does not get it. And then Annabeth, as she's like trying to resolve the situation, Percy first says, Tyson, stay here. I don't want you taking any more chances. And Annabeth, clearly realizing what Tyson actually is like, no, we need him. Percy's like, he's mortal. He's just a regular kid. Can't you tell?
God.
This regular kid that catches flaming cannonballs?
Well, yeah, Connor, he just got lucky with the dodgeballs.
Sure did.
What a fucking idiot. I swear, I get these periods where I'm like, maybe I'm being too hard on Percy. Maybe he's actually smarter than I thought. And then he says or does the dumbest fucking stuff. And I'm like, no, he's still a dumbass.
Yep, you're so correct. And Annabeth's like, "Do you even know what those are up there? Those are Colchis Bulls, made by Hephaestus himself. We can't fight them without Medea's sunscreen, SPF 50,000. We'll get burned to a crisp." Percy's like, "Medea's what?" "Don't worry, we're gonna find out together. We're all gonna learn about it in the myths section today."
Wonderful, wonderful.
Apparently, Annabeth is prepared enough to own some of Medea's SPF 50,000 sunscreen. Hers is tropical coconut scent, and it's sitting on her nightstand at home. Tragedy.
Yeah, she's very upset at herself. She's going through her backpack. She curses.
I mean, yeah, man. If you were gonna go on a cross-country monster-fighting road trip to get back to your magical camp, you'd probably bring the fire immunity sunscreen.
Well,
Shit, why
so
didn't you have that last year?
that's Connor. That's exactly what I was gonna say. You're telling me you've had fire resistance this whole fucking time? That seems like something you should always have on you. You should
Yeah.
never leave it at home.
Wouldn't that have been nice when you fought, I don't know, the fire-breathing goat head chimera?
Listen, there was a lot wrong with them going into the arc. I just
I suppose
at
they
this
did lose
point,
their stuff on the bus that time, so maybe
they
she
did.
did pack the sunscreen.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
What I've learned about Annabeth is that even though she's smart and always right, for some reason she gets rid of the most important stuff. The most useful things, she's just like, whatever.
Man, at risk of bringing up the card again,
Uh-huh.
Percy starts running up the hill as he says, "Tyson, stay back." Clarisse is yelling at her patrol and actually trying to get them into some form of phalanx formation.
Mhm.
And
I would like to note, I said, "Oh, they're doing the phalanx." Unbeatable. Just unbeatable. Impermeable defense, except for, like, one really big fatal flaw. Historically speaking, once people figured out how to deal with the phalanx, it's just kinda like, "Damn, this is basically useless." You know what
yeah,
that is, Connor? You know what that is,
it's
right?
going around the side,
Just
baby.
go around. Just flank them. Just flank them. And so I noted that. I was like, this is truly unbeatable unless
Unless.
nothing beats phalanx. Good old phalanx.
Well, you know what's better than good old phalanx? Good old phalanx with a total of 6 campers.
Yeah, 6 campers against 2, again, elephant-sized, raging cyborg bulls. So even if phalanx was, like, didn't have that clear weakness of just going around the side against these bulls that are fucking running all over the place and already outmaneuvering these campers. I don't know that you'd want everybody to just
No.
turtle up together. That seems like you're just setting up like bowling. You are bowling pins.
Literally,
Bowling pins, literally.
I made that joke in my book, lining up like bowling pins.
And that's why we're friends, Connor.
But you know who's at least got some good moves? Annabeth. Because of course she does. I thought that her idea of taunting one of the bulls and then slamming on the invisible cap to confuse the monster as she disappears, brilliant. Annabeth is on top of it this fight. She's like, "No, we need Tyson. I'm going to outmaneuver this thing. I'm
Mhm.
glad someone's doing their job right. That's all. It needs
Yeah,
acknowledged."
I agree.
She is the
I
MVP here.
She sure is. And you know what? As Clarisse is just basically ordering the death of her troops, saying, "Hold the line." I like that Percy notes. You can say a lot about Clarisse, but at least she's brave.
Yep. I actually really enjoyed the description as well of she looked like she was born to wear Greek battle armor.
Yeah.
That's what a child of Ares should feel like. Yes, they should be a dick. Yes, they should be brutish. But when you put them on a battlefield in a command position, they should be someone that you look up and go, "Shit, they got it. They're doing it right."
Yeah. Yeah, dude, I'll fucking hold the line with you.
Mhm.
Absolutely. That was the line that also stuck out to me. And as cool as that is, Uh-oh, fatal flaw of the phalanx. The other bull
Yup.
doesn't care about Annabeth anymore, and then turns around to the unprotected side of Clarisse and flanks her. Oh, whoops. So Percy, good guy Percy, says, "Behind you! Look out!" Which, at a moment's notice, maybe that's the best he could do. He gets in his own head. He says, "Maybe
Mhm.
I shouldn't have said anything because all I did was startle her. If anything, no, disagree. You got her ready so she didn't get fucking gored through the back." Uh, she,
Probably a good thing.
is startled, but she jumps to attention, and one of the bulls crashes into her shield. The phalanx broke. Who would have fucking thought? Clarisse, very Dragon Ball style, gets sent flying backward. She, skids across the smoldering grass. The bull charges past, and then the bull turns and shoots a massive blast of fire from its mouth. Their shields melted right off of their arms. That also means that they lost their arms. Doesn't say that in the book, but if it's hot enough to melt celestial bronze on the fucking spot, they're done.
They're
They're cooked,
fucked.
literally.
Yep. Let's see Chiron fix that one.
Well, funny thing about Chiron,
But
we'll get to that in a bit.
we will. I do consistently love the halfway between Greek mythological fantasy and modern day part of the descriptions. Percy says, I could feel the heat of its metal skin. Its body temperature could have microwaved a frozen burrito.
Mhm.
You know what? I have no complaints. It's a descriptive description.
I loved that description. I thought it was great. That's another one of those things where I'm like, "Damn it, Rick, I wish I could think like you sometimes."
Just come up with shit like that is so
Yeah.
fun. Clarisse has skidded across the ground, bounced across. Percy's like, all right, that monster is going to kill her. So he runs over, he gives it a good swipe with Riptide, cutting a gash in its flank, grabs Clarisse, and manages to drop her, quote, in a heap next to the pine tree and turn to face the bulls. Fantastic. Annabeth continues to be the MVP as she says, don't do what Clarisse said. That was stupid. Spread out.
Yes. Yeah. I do like Clarisse is like, "Don't fucking help me," right? Of course she says that.
Yep,
But so Percy stops helping her, fucking drops her into a heap next to the
fine.
pine tree, and then turns to face the bulls. And I like that he's looking because he's now on top of the hill. He's looking down into the valley of Camp Half-Blood, and he's looking at everything, the cabins, the training facilities, the big house, and he actually contextualizes all of this. Why this pitch battle right now is of such importance. All of those things, all of those places are at risk if the bulls get past them,
Yeah,
which it's scary. And presumably there have been other attacks like this that they've been dealing with, which means they are dealing with existential threats to Camp Half-Blood on a regular basis. And
yeah.
Percy just
Good
hasn't
stakes.
known about it.
It's very good stakes.
It is.
And I, man, there's not like a lot of actual notes I have here because it's just, I like that Percy gets it. And I like that he's just therefore determined. I need to do whatever I can. So I turn, head back toward the bulls, and he's trying to take in the battlefield. He's looking at which bulls are where. Bull number 1 ran a wide arc, making its way back toward me. Bull number 2 turned to face me, fire sputtering from the gash I'd cut in its side. He's really thinking about things, and so he's
Mhm.
trying to discern, and he says, I couldn't fight both bulls at the same time. I'd have to take down bull number 2 first, cut its head off before bull number 1 charged back into range, and that's when he's also realizing his arms are tired. He has not
Yeah.
been practicing with his sword.
I like that. I like that aspect, and I know we talked about it, I think in some of
Mhm.
the earlier chapter might have been chapter 1,
It
right?
was chapter
Chapter
2
1?
when he's fighting the
Chapter 2.
Lystragonians.
Yes. Where he mentions, like, "I haven't been doing any swordplay. I've been slacking, but also refusing to do it because it makes my mom uncomfortable."
Mhm.
And so I really like that that comes back up. It's not just like riding a bike again. You can't just be great at being physically fit and capable all the time without constant upkeep and maintenance and practice. And so
Yeah.
that also upped the stakes here. He's sloppy. He's
Mhm.
sloppy. He's noticing it right now. He's like, "Damn, this is hard." And it will lead to eventually what is effectively a fatal error on his end that he barely gets out alive.
I mean, you say it will lead to literally in the next line after he's like,
Oh,
my
yeah.
arms already felt tired. I realized how long it had been since I'd worked out with Riptide and how out of practice I was. I lunged, but bull number 2 blew flames at me. I rolled aside as the air turned to pure heat. All the oxygen was sucked out of my lungs. My foot caught on something, a tree root maybe, and pain shot up my ankle. Later, my ankle was sprained, maybe broken.
Mhm.
Immediately, he's like, I
Yeah,
feel
I
out of
guess it was
practice.
immediate.
Fuck. There's enough
Yeah.
between it that it feels like it's got some breathing room as a statement, but it's also close enough that you immediately put it together as a reader. Yep, he feels out of practice, and because he's out of practice, he fucks it up and injures himself.
Mhm.
And now, Annabeth, again, proper MVP of the fight, is like, yep, you're fucked. Tyson, you can do something. You need to help him. And Tyson, strangely, is wailing he can't get through the magical barrier. So Annabeth shows us how you can let a monster into Camp Half-Blood. And she says, I, Annabeth Chase, give you permission to enter camp. Thunder shook the hillside. Suddenly, Tyson was there, barreling toward me, yelling, Percy needs help! Which, yeah, this page made me realize yet again, we were too hard on Tyson.
Yeah!
He
Tyson is
balls his fist.
great!
He has fire just blown all over him by the bull. Percy's like, oh, that's it. Tyson's gonna be a pile of ash. That fucking sucks. There goes one of my 3 friends. But then
Yeah,
the
I mean,
fire
I
dies
love this
down and
description,
Tyson is
though.
totally fine.
This description is so fucking cool. He goes, "Percy needs help!" And it's just this split second, this bullet time. Before I could tell him no, he dove between me and the bull, just as it unleashed a nuclear firestorm. "Tyson!" I yelled. The blast swirled around him like a red tornado. I could only see the black silhouette of his body. I knew with horrible certainty that my friend had just been turned into a column of ashes. Like, holy fuck! That I can't think of another description like that in the last book. That's fucking
Yeah.
intense.
And it's immediately undercut with the fire died. Tyson was still standing there. He balls up his fists and slams them into the bull's face as he yells, Bad cow!
Mhm. What a
It's
fucking baller.
fantastic. It says
Yeah.
his fist made a crater where the bronze bull's snout used to be.
Yeah,
Effective?
it
Shit,
is.
man.
Dude, he's not gonna be able to breathe fire anymore. I like the little detail that 2 small columns of flame shot out of its ears, which again indicate, like, it's been incapacitated. Its mouth is totally fucked. And Tyson hits it again, and it crumples under his hands like aluminum foil. These, again, the bulls that 10 of Camp Half-Blood's border patrol were barely managing to hold off. And he's just fucking folding it like it's laundry. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. I mean, these were made by Hephaestus. Celestial
They
bronze, and he's just smashing right through them.
This is another great description from Rick. The bull's face now looked like a sock puppet pulled inside out.
Yeah, I got a good giggle at that one.
Yeah. And, like, I made a note here. As Tyson is doing this, literally caving this thing's head in with his bare hands, Tyson just bellows, "Down!" And the note that I put is just, Tyson is fucking scary.
Yeah.
Holy fuck!
We might end up talking about this more throughout the book. We'll see. I don't know. But the odd juxtaposition of learning that he is a baby Cyclops by the looks of it,
Mhm.
and how that does affect his level of maturity as they throw him into life-threatening scenario after life-threatening scenario is maybe a little problematic.
Yeah, to a certain degree, but, the mythological creatures mature and grow at different rates and all that. I
That's
like
true.
the idea that he's described as a baby because that is being a 13, 14-year-old Cyclops is a baby by Cyclopean standards. But I like
Mhm.
the idea of they're like, "This is how fucking strong Tyson is, and he's considered a baby."
Yeah. It definitely
Like
sets us up well for Polyphemus to
right.
be, like, the
Like,
the full adversary of the novel.
yeah, like, once you see the real things, dude, you can understand why these are so feared, why they are feared.
Absolutely. But by this point, Clarisse had taken care of bad cow number 2. She'd impaled it through the back leg with a celestial bronze spear, and hers is just spinning in a circle on the ground, trying to do anything. And at this point, Clarisse, not like, "Oh, thanks for saving me," pulls off her helmet, marches toward them, and screams, "You ruin everything!"
Yeah, they undermined her command.
Yep. She insists, "I had it under control." And Annabeth is like, good to see you too, Clarisse."
Yeah, and she keeps, crashing out. Clarisse, she just bellows out, "Ah! Don't ever, ever try saving me again." And I love this little interaction between a child of Athena and a child of Ares.
Mhm.
One is filled with all of this pride and anger, and "I had it under control, you undermined my authority." Annabeth just staying cool and, sarcastic, but calm, as Clarisse is, "Don't ever do that again," trying to enforce her will. And Annabeth just goes, "Clarisse, you've got wounded campers." And the very next line, Percy thinks to himself, that sobered her up. Even Clarisse cared about the soldiers under her command. And she stops yelling, "I'll be back," and then trudges off to assess the damage.
Such a good
That's
fucking detail.
it
Such a
is.
good fucking detail.
I love that little back and forth, and again, it's such a small thing, but that little back and forth between the 2 aspects of war and battle, the bloodlust and rage and solidarity and stay with your troops and arm in arm with your battle buddy and hold the line, and the calm, calculated, there's damage to assess. And even if they disagree on a lot of other stuff, on that they can agree. We need to make sure that our soldiers, our people are good.
Yeah. I thought it was an interesting juxtaposition as well to Percy's first introduction to camp and the Ares kids acting like bullies while Annabeth is willing to teach him and show him around, really showing off the discrepancy between Ares and Athena. And then that's only furthered by Capture the Flag. Whereas here, in these 2 lines, you get to see what makes them so similar, where their
Mhm.
domains intersect, and that middle piece of the Venn diagram becomes clear. It's
Yeah.
really well done, and that's a lot of what this chapter is trying to do. It is trying to show us, yeah, Clarisse is a dickhead, but she's a soldier, and she acts like a soldier.
Yeah. It's a dynamic that I am excited to see a lot more of.
Yeah, I agree. And as Clarisse stomps off, Percy now stares at Tyson. He's blinking like a frog.
Mhm.
He says, "You didn't die." Tyson
Yeah.
is like, "I'm so sorry. I didn't do what you said."
Oh, I don't know how I could have hated this guy, Connor. He's such a sweetheart.
He
He
is.
looks he looks embarrassed. He saved Percy's life. He's being all bashful. He's sad. He says, "I am sorry. Came to help. Disobeyed you." And we later learned that he's fucking crying. That's how
Yeah.
sorry he is.
And Annabeth, I love this. She is realizing at this point that Tyson, not once but twice now, has saved Percy.
Yeah.
And as much as she'll play it up like, ugh, Percy, she clearly likes the guy. They're good friends. She doesn't want him to die. And so she says, "No, no, that's my fault. I had no choice. I had to let Tyson cross the boundary line to save you. Otherwise, you would have died." And Percy's like, "Let him cross the boundary line, but And at this point, it's like, come on, man. Put it
I
the
know.
fuck together.
Like, even if you don't know exactly what it is, could you at least be like, "He's a demigod," or something?
Anything. So Annabeth is like, all right, I'm really going to have to do this again. How many times have we done this song and dance of I spell
I
it out
know.
for you and it takes you a week to get it?
Uh-huh.
She says, Percy, have you ever looked at Tyson closely? I mean, in the face. Ignore the mist and really look at him. Percy does. He looks at Tyson in the face. It wasn't easy. I'd always had trouble looking directly at him. I'd never quite understood why. I thought it was just because he always had peanut butter in his crooked teeth. I forced myself to focus at his big, lumpy nose, then a little higher at his eyes. No, not eyes. One eye. One large calf brown eye right in the middle of his forehead, with thick lashes and big tears trickling down his cheeks on either side. He is crying because he feels so bad for not listening to Percy. And it's like, dude, you
Yeah.
saved him. Chill. Like, give
I
yourself some
know.
credit.
You saved him and you crushed a fucking tool of a god with your bare hands, like, single-handedly. You've got nothing to cry about, big man. I'm sorry, I can tell you're overwhelmed. Amongst all that, I do like how I don't know that it necessarily builds on the mist, but
Hmm.
I do like that it reaffirms that the mist can trick anybody. Like, Percy is not immune to it. Because
Yeah.
last book, it almost kinda came across as once you understand that the mist exists, you can see through it. It's like the Matrix.
Yeah.
Once you
Once
know
you
that you're
know,
in the
you know.
Matrix, you exactly. But this is like, no, it is persistent, and that mortal part of you is still gonna try and take over and rationalize certain things. I think it's kinda cool. Again, I differentiate that from a lot of the guff that we gave Grover being able to, like, smell monsters, or the
Mhm.
monster scent thing just generally, where I feel like that's played super loosey-goosey, and it shouldn't be, because it's literally never given a reason to be loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
But the mist is so amorphous, ephemeral, without actual property. It's just this phenomena that has a lot of gray area.
Might I posit why I think it works so particularly well in this scenario?
What's that?
It is because we also have already just seen how Percy is out of practice. He has
Mhm.
quite literally, for the last year, been playing mortal. He
Yeah.
has allowed his brain to slip back into mortal patterns, and
Mhm.
therefore, as the mortal half of him takes more and more of the center stage, the mist suddenly affects him again, and more
Mm.
strongly, specifically.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. He's going back to those old mental heuristics, those shortcuts. His
Mhm.
his brain is being lazy. His physical and mental acuity is just slipping. I really like that.
It makes a lot of sense, and I think that's why you and I both read that and we go, "Shit, makes sense." Annabeth takes this opportunity to start talking about what Tyson is. Percy's like, "Tyson, you're a Cyclops," Annabeth offered. A baby by the looks of him. It's probably why he couldn't get past the boundary line as easily as the Bulls. Tyson's one of the homeless orphans. One of the what? And Annabeth goes on to explain they're apparently in almost all the big cities. She then says, rather distastefully, they're mistakes, Percy. Children of nature spirits and gods. Well, one god in particular, usually. We get a little twinge of that Athena Poseidon rivalry again. And I like that disapproval. It shows that she as well, especially with some time away, isn't going to just fully be trusting of Poseidon, even though she's fully trusting of Percy.
Right.
And I think that's cool because it also shows that she can separate the two things
Yes.
in a way that, like, Clarisse can't, right? Clarisse doesn't like Percy because Clarisse has to be pissed off because her dad is pissed at Percy.
Mhm.
Annabeth can separate the two things and know that Percy is a good person while still disapproving of Poseidon. And that's a very interesting dynamic that I think works really well.
Yeah, I that is one of the key differences between loyalty and blind loyalty.
Mm-hmm. And Annabeth is like, well, we should take him to Chiron and let him decide what to do. And Percy is still grappling with, but the fire! And Annabeth's like, he's a Cyclops. They work in the forges of the gods. They have to be immune to fire. Get with the program, Percy.
Yeah, come on, Percy. Don't you know the classic Cyclopean power of being resistant to fire? Duh. All right, Annabeth. Maybe like cool it a little bit. I know that Percy's a dumbass for certain things, but like I feel like that's an aspect you could have been a little bit nicer with.
Yeah, that's definitely a niche ability. Like,
Right. It's like, no. I feel like most people wouldn't know that. And also, you're a smug asshole for thinking otherwise.
exactly. I did like that as Percy's getting back to it, like, how had I never realized what Tyson was? But I didn't have time to think about it then. Wounded heroes needed attention.
So Clarisse comes back. She wipes some soot off of her forehead after she looks over all the wounded campers. I like this. She says, Jackson, if you can stand, get up. We need to carry the wounded back to the big house. Let Tantalus know what's happened. Couple of things. One, she's like, we need to get the wounded back to the big house. Priority number one. Two, she doesn't say, Jackson, stand up. She says, if you can stand up.
Yeah, she's a good commander. She's a dickhead, but she's not unreasonable.
Yeah, like the last thing she wants is Percy trying to muster up strength he doesn't have and then fucking dropping one of these Hermes campers on their head because he was trying to be a hero.
It's so good because it also there's a certain level of implied trust there of don't injure yourself more because for all it's worth, yeah, I probably was going to get killed by these bulls if you didn't show up with your friends. And while I would never admit that, you are a good fighter, and I would hate to see you unable to fight.
Yeah, what a loss. Yep. Oh, we also, I think, forgot to mention Percy's ankle is no longer like broken. Annabeth gave him some emergency nectar from her
That's
canteen.
true. From her little camp.
So that's fixed. That I don't think is gonna come up again.
But Percy does have a chance to be like, who's Tantalus? And Clarisse says, the activities director. And Percy, still not with the program, says, no, Chiron is the activities director. And where's
Mhm.
Argus? He's head of
Great question.
security. He should be here.
That's right. That's exactly right, Connor. Argus
Mm-hmm.
should be here. And you know what? If Argus was there, based on the myths that we've talked about, he would have cleaned up. He would have
True.
cleaned up. There'd be no issues.
Yeah,
None.
I got nothing to
But,
say. He is also fireproof.
well, not maybe literally, because we learned the very next line, Clarisse makes a sour face. Argus got fired.
uh,
So that, everybody, let's just take a moment. Okay. I know it's going to be a long healing process, and learning to accept the loss is not a straight path. It's an ebb and flow, but I think together we'll be able to get through this maybe.
things are changing. Clarisse is right.
That's right. At least Chiron's gone. At least Chiron's gone. At least that horse fuck is gone. If he were
Yeah.
here, he would have been like, Percy, I wonder, what are those bulls? Hmm.
Can't wait to find out if this new Tantalus guy is any better. I guess we'll have to
Uh,
read about that next chapter. But before we keep moving on to myths, there is one more important thing that happens.
yes.
Because Percy says he can't just be gone. What happened? And Clarisse snaps and points at Thalia's tree. That happened. And this actually is a really good way to slam the brakes. For
Yeah.
4 chapters, we have been speeding at 99 miles an hour toward Camp Half-Blood. Now we're here, and Clarisse has just dropped a fucking brick on the brakes. Percy looks over, and he is realizing why camp is being attacked. The pine had been here ever since he had arrived, strong and healthy. But now its needles were yellow, a huge pile of dead ones littered at the base of the tree. In the center of the trunk, 3 feet from the ground, was a puncture mark the size of a bullet hole, oozing green sap. Thalia's tree was dying. Someone had poisoned it.
Ooh, What a phenomenal end to a chapter.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is another one where it's just like, "God damn it, fuck, why are we doing this week to week?" Like, I
I
just wanna
know.
binge. I just wanna binge the book.
The good news is, I feel like I've got something pretty interesting for us. So while they get the wounded over to the big house, let's find a patch of grass that isn't on fire.
Mhm.
This one should do the trick. And let's talk about Colchis Bulls and Cyclopes.
Let's get it.
Let's start with Colchis Bulls, I think. The bronze, fire breathing bulls of Hephaestus. The cool thing here is that, down to the fact that there are two of them, the book's description of the Colchis Bulls is damn near spot on. There's a few creative liberties with the ruby gemstone eyes, but for an automaton, that's just cool fucking description. Everything else, genuinely spot on. Now, little bit of a disclaimer. You all, at this point, I would hope you're in book 2, know the format of the show. What that means for us is that we're going to be talking about specific mythological elements that are drawn heavily from two stories in particular in the Sea of Monsters. Specifically, the Sea of Monsters draws on major elements from Odysseus' journey to Ithaca in the Odyssey and Jason's quest for the Golden Fleece. So, today, we are starting to really get into the non-linear storytelling. We are jumping right into the middle of Jason's quest with the Argonauts. As such, we're going to be pulling pretty much all of what we have for the Colchis Bulls in today's myth from Book 3 of Apollonius Rhodius's Argonautica, a 4-book epic from around the 3rd century that tells the tale of Jason and the Argonauts. This 3rd book largely revolves around Jason's attempt to get the fleece from King Aeetes, and it gives us basically everything that we need to talk about today's myth. So, when describing the bulls, Apollonius Rhodius writes, Hephaestus had also made King Aeetes bulls with feet of bronze and bronze mouths, from which the breath came out in flame, blazing and terrible. And he had forged a plow of indurated steel, all in one piece, all as a thank offering to Helios, who had taken him up in his chariot when he sank exhausted on the battlefield of Phlegra. Aeetes, the king, is a son of Helios, hence why Aeetes receives the gift in thanks to Helios. And this description of the bulls is really well agreed upon by later ancient sources, ones that are close in age, such as the works of Pseudo-Apollodorus, Pseudo-Hyginus, Ovid, and
Yeah!
others. One
Yeah! If
fun detail.
Pseudo-Apollodorus says that that's it, I believe it, man.
Well, hey man, Pseudo-Apollodorus agrees with Apollonius Rhodius to a T. Exactly. Now, Pseudo-Hyginus and Ovid do describe the bulls just barely so differently. They describe the bulls as breathing flame from their nostrils rather than their mouths. See this quote from Ovid. There the bulls with brazen hooves come forth, their adamantine nostrils snorting Vulcanus' fire that scorches the green grass. So,
That's fucking cool. Hold on, just as a brief
yeah.
timeout. Sometimes these myths, it's like, wow, that's kind of lame. Like people clearly were just bored, and they're like, "What's the most crazy thing we can think of?" It's it's just a guy. It's a guy, and they've got one eyeball. This is fucking awesome. This is a big
Yeah.
ass mech bull that breathes flames out of its nose. Man, that's sick.
And people invented these thousands of years ago.
Right. Exactly.
It's really cool. And I also really like that as Percy Jackson does this dance of like modernizing things, there's no modernization that needs done for the Colchis Bulls.
Right.
They just are in the book what they are.
Mhm.
So now that we've established the accuracy of the depiction provided in the chapter, let's just take 2 seconds and quickly provide a reason for why they're referred to as the Colchis Bulls. We've established that these bulls were a gift for King Aeetes. Aeetes was the king of Colchis, hence Colchis Bulls. Done. Now we can move into the fun part. the myth from which these bulls are featured in. So, I mentioned earlier, we're picking up in Book 3 of the Argonautica, so we're kind of in the middle of things, but Jason is on the hunt for the Golden Fleece. Let's start by establishing just a little bit of background about King Aeetes, because he's a big player in Book 3 of the Argonautica. According to Greek historian Diodorus Siculus from the 1st century BC, Aeetes was presumably a real king. He writes, "While Aeetes was king of Colchis, an oracle became known to the effect that he was to come to the end of his life whenever strangers should land there and carry of the Golden Fleece. For this reason, and because of his own cruelty as well, Aeetes ordained that strangers should be offered up in sacrifice, in order that, the report of the cruelty of the Colchians, having been spread abroad to every part of the world, no stranger should have the courage to set foot on the land." This guy got a prophecy. It said some strangers are going to show up and take your magic fleece. And he said, "Great, I will kill anyone who enters my kingdom."
Awesome.
Straightforward, I guess.
Yeah, what more do you need?
Diodorus Siculus then even goes on to rationalize parts of the myth for us, stating, "He threw a wall about the precinct and stationed there many guards, these being men of the Tauric Chersonese. And it is because of these guards that the Greeks invented monstrous myths. For instance, the report was spread abroad that there were fire-breathing bulls around the precinct and that a sleepless draken guarded the fleece. Notably, the Tauric Chersonese share the root of their native lands with the word for bull, Taurus. At least according to Diodorus Siculus and other historians around the same time, who believe that this is where the myth of the bull comes from, which is pretty interesting.
That is.
So, Aeetes really does not want to give up this fleece, and anyone who enters his kingdom is doomed in his mind. Thankfully, for Jason, Jason is Hera's favorite hero for reasons we'll discuss at a later date. So Hera makes it so that Jason and the Argonauts can dock their ship without being noticed, and Jason and a few of the Argonauts, not all of them, can enter the city undetected and make it to the palace without any attacks. It reads, "As they went, Hera with friendly thought spread a thick mist through the city, that they might fare to the palace of Aeetes, unseen by the countless hosts of Colchians," which, total side detail here, but this is just another example of mist being used to obscure godly actions from mortals, which is pretty cool.
That is cool.
We'll get one more in this story later on, I'll point it out. We then get a description of Aeetes' palace, including some fountains that Hephaestus had also created for Aeetes, and I know it's off topic, but Jack, you specifically have gotta learn about these fountains.
Okay.
The Argonautica says, "They stood at the entrance, marveling at the king's courts and the wide gates, the columns that rose in ordered lines around the walls, and high up on the palace, a coping of stone rested on brazen triglyphs. And silently they crossed the threshold. And close by garden vines covered with green foliage were in full bloom lifted high in air, and beneath them ran 4 fountains, ever flowing, which Hephaestus had delved out. One was gushing with milk, one with wine, while the third flowed with fragrant oil. And the fourth ran with water, which grew warm at the setting of the Pleiades, and in turn at their rising bubbled forth from the hollow rock, cold as crystal. Such then were the wondrous works that the craftsman god Hephaestus had fashioned in the palace of Cetian Aeetes."
Man, you're telling me these Colchians got infinite milk fountain?
Yep.
This place is great.
I know!
And so, hold on. It's milk, it's oil, fragrant oil, water, which is boring, whatever. Infinite water, who needs that? And then what was it? Was it wine?
And wine.
Honestly, what more does a person need?
Well, and you know what's particularly cool? The water, I looked this up because I was like, what does it mean grew warm at the setting of the Pleiades? Well, the Pleiades are a set of stars that during the summer would be in the sky And therefore, that is when the water is cold, and when the Pleiads are gone, the water turns warm in winter.
Mm. Mm. So it's perfect. It's literally perfect.
It's literally a perfect fountain, and I just thought it was too cool not to mention because I guarantee it's never gonna come up in a myth section.
Hey, man, I appreciate your use of discretion with that. Those are dope.
I'm gonna eat my words when 3 books from now, Percy's like, "But before I could fight Kronos, I had to drink of the sacred milk from the fountain
I
of the
had to drink
East."
the infinite milk. That's right.
But getting back to our story, King Aeetes and his retinue come out of the palace to greet Jason. And Jason, having his merry band of OP as fuck demigods and heroes back on the Argo, including but not limited to Heracles. Need I say more? He's Heracles.
I was gonna say, you can start and stop with him.
Yup. He offers to do this evil king's dirty work, because he knows he'll like that. Like as a hit squad or some shit. He tells him
Yeah.
specifically, "We are ready now to pay you a swift recompense in war, whether it be the Sauromati or some other people that you are eager to subjugate." And I really like that our omniscient narrator gives us some insight into what King Aeetes is thinking at this request. We're told that King Aeetes, who we've already been informed is quite cruel, literally just wants to kill Jason. He's like, "I don't like his plan. He wants my fleece. I'm gonna fucking kill him." So it says after Jason gives him this proposition, "We get the fleece, we kill whoever you want." The king's soul brooded with a twofold purpose within him: whether he should attack and slay them on the spot, or should make trial of their might. And this, as he pondered, seemed the better way, and he addressed Jason in answer. And so he presents Jason with a challenge. "I propose to test your courage and abilities by setting you a task which, though formidable, is not beyond the strength of my own 2 hands. Grazing on the plain of Ares, I have a pair of bronze-footed, fire-breathing bulls. These I yoke and drive over the hard fallow of the plain, quickly plowing a 4-acre field up to the ridge at either end. Then I sow the furrows, not with corn, but with the teeth of a monstrous serpent, which presently comes up in the form of armed men whom I cut down and kill with my spear as they rise up against me on all sides. It is morning when I yoke my team, and by evening I have done my harvesting. That is what I do. If you, sir, can do as well, you may carry off the fleece to your king's palace on the very same day."
He says, "Yeah, so I grow people with these badass bulls that spew flames and are made of metal and whatever, and then I kill them. That's it. They serve no purpose other than to basically die. So
Yep.
if you want to do that, I also like he's like, yeah, it's 4 acres. Like, all right, cool, I guess. What a weird amount of land.
Yeah, I'm a king. I own a lot of land.
I'm a
I just
king.
get
I
4
own
acres.
everything. But I just I don't want to like ruin the rest of the land. You don't want to over farm, you know? I can only grow so many people there.
Can't have too many just warriors running around.
That is I do love that flex. He's like, "I could do this shit myself. By the way, this is what I'm doing. I've
Yeah.
got the teeth of a divine serpent. I've got impossible bulls that spew fire. I can make literally infinite people to go with my infinite milk and infinite oil. I've just got infinity of a lot of stuff. I am perhaps the most powerful and rich king ever. And I've got so many people. I just kill the extras. So
Yep.
I tell you what, man, till my field, kill those random people that sprout from the divine teeth, and yeah, maybe I'll be chill with you, but I'll be honest, I hate you no matter what. This
Well,
guy's
what makes
awesome.
it
I
all
love this king.
even better, and I forgot to mention it. I can't believe I left this out. King Aeetes is a demigod himself. He's a child of Helios,
Oh,
which is why he has the
literally the
strength to
sun.
do this. Mm-hmm. It is also why he is able to interact with the fire-breathing bulls, 'cause sun.
Mm.
So, at this point, Jason has been given his quest. So he goes back to the Argonauts that are still on the ship, and he tells them about the challenge. And generally speaking, the consensus is, "Oh, you're fucked. We need a plan. You're gonna die." But thankfully, as this is happening, another machination is playing out simultaneously. You see, Book 3 of the Argonautica doesn't open with Jason and the Argonauts arriving at Colchis. I mentioned earlier that Jason is Hera's favorite hero. She adores him and will do a lot to guarantee his success. So the book actually opens with Hera bringing Athena into her private chambers to come up with a plan so that Jason isn't dead on arrival in Colchis. It says, Hera was the first to speak her thought. Come, let us go to Cyprus. Cyprus is another name for Aphrodite. Let both of us accost her and urge her to bid her son, if only he will obey, speed his shaft at the daughter of Aeetes, the enchantress, and charm her with love for Jason. And I deem that by her device he will bring back the fleece to Hellas. So, you and potentially our audience may not be aware, but if I say the name Medea, does that mean anything to you other than the sunscreen we just talked about?
I think of Tyler Perry's Medea, which I think is vastly different.
Yes. Well, Medea is a priestess of Hecate, and as Hera just noted, an enchantress. Because Medea isn't just any old priestess, she's an incredibly devoted one. One who one of the Argonauts will later reveal uses sorcery under the guidance of Hecate. So she is a quarter god, not exactly demigod, but she's still quarter blood of Helios, and a notable enchantress under the specific guidance of the goddess of magic. So Hera and Athena go to Aphrodite in an attempt to convince her to tell her son Eros to make Medea fall in love with Jason. And Aphrodite is so moved by Hera's love for Jason that she agrees to the plan, but insists that Hera and Athena will need to tell Eros what to do because he never listens to her anymore. So now the three of them all go off to Zeus's orchard, and they find Eros playing dice with Ganymede. By the way, in a lot of later myths, this one, like I said, comes from around the 3rd century. By this point, Ganymede and Eros are a known gay couple in Greek mythology. It's just a
I was
thing.
gonna say, is Ganymede just getting passed around?
Nah, Zeus basically just has him when he wants him, but Ganymede and Eros actually connect because they're both younger gods in the grand scheme of things, children that get along and are related to love in their domains. So it seems like Ganymede and Eros are consensual gay lovers, while Zeus is absolutely predator.
I see. Okay. So they're heavy air quotes playing dice.
I literally put bolded quotes around playing dice.
They're just
Though
being pals, palling around.
the original myth does say they're playing with golden dice. So I don't know, man.
That's
Maybe
just
it's
what
a
Eros
euphemism,
calls his
maybe it's
balls, bro.
not. So Eros, at this point, convinced by the three women, the three goddesses, goes down to Earth and he gets ready to make Medea in love with Jason. It says, Eros passed unseen through gray mist, causing confusion. There's our next mist reference. And as when against grazing heifers rises the gadfly, which oxherds call the breeze, and quickly beneath the lintel in the porch, he strung his bow and took from the quiver an arrow unshot before messenger of pain. And with swift feet unmarked he laid the arrow notch on the cord in the center, and drawing wide apart with both hands, he shot at Medea, and speechless amazement seized her soul. So, as Jason and King Aeetes were having this conversation, Aeetes also brought down with him his daughter Medea. As that conversation is happening, Eros is sneaking an arrow across that manages to leave Medea helplessly in love with Jason. So let's catch back up to where we were. Jason has accepted the challenge of plowing the fields of Aeetes with the bronze, fire-breathing bulls, but he has zero plan and is pretty much fucked. Now, back on the Argo, Argus, the builder of the boat, has actually heard of Hecate and her prowess at sorcery and says, if we could win her aid, there will be no dread, methinks, of thy defeat in the contest. To which Jason basically responds in many more words, great, someone should probably go win her to our cause because I need to prepare for this. But by this point, Medea is already in anguish at the idea of Jason dying, because in her mind, he stands literally zero chance against these bulls on his own.
Right.
He's just super fucked. So that night, she decides she has to do something. She called to her maids and bade them hastily yoke the mules to the chariot to bear her to the beauteous shrine of Hecate. Thereupon the handmaids were making ready the chariot, and Medea meanwhile took the hollow casket a charm, which men say is called the charm of Prometheus. If a man should anoint his body therewithal, having first appeased the maiden, the only begotten with sacrifice by night, surely that man could not be wounded by the stroke of bronze, nor would he flinch from blazing fire. But for that day he would prove superior in both prowess and might. So this is Medea's SPF 50,000 sunscreen.
Oh,
it had a little bit of a different name, but they had to modernize for the FDA.
Right.
You get it.
I totally understand. Absolutely.
And with that, a secret meeting is then arranged between Jason and Medea where she gives him the magic ointment. She tells him, in the morning, melt this charm, strip, and using it like oil, anoint your body. It will endow you with tremendous strength and boundless confidence. Neither the spear points of the earthborn men nor the consuming flames that the savage bulls spew out will find you vulnerable.
Once again, Connor, you gotta get oiled up in heroic.
That's so true!
Naked, oiled up, time for hero shit.
Oh, we're getting to that part. And so, come the next morning, Jason did as he was told and is able to complete the challenge. And now I'm just going to read you a large section because it's basically just an action scene where Jason fights the bulls. It reads, Jason, as soon as his men had made the hawsers fast, leapt from the ship and entered the lists with spear and shield. He also took with him a shining bronze helmet full of sharp teeth, and his sword was slung from his shoulder, but his body was bare, so that he looked like Apollon of the golden sword as much as Ares, god of war. So he is nude, in case you didn't catch that.
Oh, I got it. He's heroic as fuck right now.
He's heroic
Man,
as
of course
fuck right
he's nude.
now. Glancing round the field, he saw the bronze yoke for the bulls, and beside it the plow of indurated steel, all in one piece. He went up to them, planted his heavy spear in the ground by its butt, and laid the helmet down, leaning it against the spear. Then he went forward with his shield alone to examine the countless tracks that the bulls had made. And now, from somewhere in the bowels of the earth, from the smoky stronghold where they slept, the pair of bulls appeared, breathing flames of fire. The Argonauts were terrified at the sight, but Jason, planting his feet apart, stood to receive them as a reef in the sea confronts the tossing billows in a gale. He held his shield in front of him, and the two bulls, bellowing loudly, charged and butted with their strong horns. But he was not shifted from his stance, not by so much as an inch. The bulls snorted and spurted from their mouths, devouring flames like a perforated crucible, when the leather bellows of the smith, sometimes ceasing, sometimes blowing hard, have made a blaze, and the fire leaps up from the bellow with a terrific roar. The deadly heat assailed him on all sides with the force of lightning, but he was protected by Medea's magic. Seizing the right-hand bull by the tip of its horn, he dragged it with all his might toward the yoke, and then brought it down on its knees with a sudden kick on its bronze foot. The other charged and was felled in the same way at a single blow, and Jason, who had cast his shield aside, stood with his feet apart, and though the flames once enveloped him, held them both down on their foreknees where they fell. Aeetes marveled at the man's strength. Castor and Polydeuces picked up the yoke and gave it to Jason. They had been detailed for the task and were close at hand. Castor and Pollux are fellow Argonauts, by the way.
Sure. They just got everybody.
Jason bound it tight on the bulls' necks, lifted the bronze pole between them, and fastened it to the yoke by its pointed end, while the twins backed out of the heat and returned to the ship. Then, taking his shield from the ground, he slung it on his back, picked up the heavy helmet full of teeth, and grasped his unconquerable spear, with which, like some plowman using his Pelasgian goad, he pricked the bulls under their flanks, and with a firm grip on its well-made handle, guided the adamantine plow. At first, The bulls in their high fury spurted flames of fire. Their breath came out with a roar like that of bolstering wind that causes frightened mariners to take in sail. But presently, admonished by the spear, they went ahead, and the rough fallow cleft by their own, and the great ploughman's might lay broken up behind them. The huge clods, as they were torn away along the furrow, groaned aloud, and Jason came behind, planting his feet down firmly on the field. As he plowed, he sowed teeth, casting them far away from himself with a backward glance, lest a deadly crop of earth-born men should catch him unawares. And the bulls, thrusting their bronze hoofs into the earth, toiled until only a third of the passing day was left. Then, when weary laborers in other fields were hoping it would soon be time to free their oxen from the yoke, this indefatigable plowman's work was done. The whole 4-acre field was plowed. Jason freed his bulls from the plow and shooed them off. They fled across the plain. That is Jason taming the Colchis Bulls.
Dude, that's fucking dope. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little skeptical. I'm like, all right, plow the fields. That was incredibly well written.
It
Uh,
was.
and honestly, really fucking cool. This is probably one of the neatest myths I feel like we've heard about in terms of just like being cool, being epic.
Yeah. Funny enough, this one must have been so prominent in the culture that 400 to 500 years later, a Roman writer just rewrote this for a modern audience and
Mm.
titled it the Argonautica, written in the same 4 books.
Huh.
Yeah,
Like, this shit is gas. We gotta hear it again.
literally. So, that is the story of Jason taming the Colchis Bulls.
Very nice.
We will get through more of these piecemeal bits of Jason's story throughout the book, because as I mentioned, the Sea of Monster draws heavily on 2 particular stories: Jason's quest for the Golden Fleece and the Odyssey. I have debated doing a smash cut where I put all of the myths relating to these things in order for your listening pleasure. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. And perhaps once we've completed a myth, there will be a special compilation episode with perhaps just the Odyssey or just the story of Jason and the Golden Fleece told in full.
I love that. Definitely. Comment down below if you're interested.
But with that, let's move on to Cyclops, or Cyclopes, plural. So, Cyclopes are actually a very interesting monster to discuss. I will tell you all now, I do plan to go a little beyond just Greek mythology today, but we are going to be talking mostly about Greek Cyclops. So, that is where we're going to start and spend a fair bit of time. Let's start with their origins in Greek mythology. As usual, a great starting place for this discussion is Hesiod's Theogony. In the Theogony, it describes the Cyclopes as children of Gaia by Uranos. It tells us, and again, she bare the Cyclopes overbearing in spirit, Brontes and Steropes and stubborn-hearted Argus, who gave Zeus the thunder and made the thunderbolt. In all else they were like the gods, but one eye only was set in the midst of their foreheads, and they were surnamed Cyclopes because one orbed eye was set in their foreheads. And this actually gives us a really great opportunity, check it off on your bingo cards, to discuss the etymology of the word Cyclops. The word does originally come from the ancient Greeks, and scholars have debated the origins of the ancient Greek word and have tried to dig further into the potential Proto-Indo-European roots. But Hesiod spells out the origin of the word right there when he says they were named Cyclopes because they had one circular or orbed eye. Kuklos being the word for circle, and ops being the word for eye. Cyclopes. Cyclopes.
I get it.
And so those are the origins of the very first 3 Cyclops in Greek mythology. These are the 3 Cyclops that forged the weapons of the big 3, and in fact, there are other references to the Cyclopes acting as the smiths of the gods. In Callimachus's Hymn to Artemis, The young goddess asks Zeus, "Father, I ask thee not for a quiver or for mighty bow. For me, the Cyclopes will straightway fashion arrows and fashion for me a well-bent bow." Further emphasizing the role of the Cyclopes as masters of the forge, we have further works such as the Aeneid, where they actually work alongside Hephaestus. The lord of fire fled his soft couch and to his forges tried. An island near Aeolian Lipara, not far from a Sicilian headland, lies where smoking rocks precipitously tower above a vast vault, which the Cyclops skilled out-hollowed large as Aetna's thunderous caves. There ring the smitten anvils, and the roof re-echoes roaring loud. Chalybian oars hiss in the gloom, and from the furnace mouths puff the hot panting fires. 'Tis Vulcan's seat, and all that island is Vulcania. Thither descended now the god of fire from height of heaven. At their task were found the Cyclopes, in vast cavern forging steel. Naked Pyrrhacmon and gigantic-limbed Brontes and Steropes beneath their blows a lightning shaft, half-shaped, half-burnished lay, such as the thunderer is wont to fling in numbers from the sky, but formless still. So, not only are these Cyclopes some of the best smiths in the land, having forged Zeus's thunderbolt, Hades' helm of darkness, and Poseidon's trident, but they're actually accredited with forging other gods' weapon, Artemis's bow. And while I didn't get to it in that quote, Artemis specifically mentions that the reason she wants a bow from the Cyclopes is because Apollo got one, and she has seen how good it is. So, many of the gods receive Cyclopes-made weapons, and in fact, the Smith of the Gods works alongside them. But that's just one lineage of Cyclops. We know that Tyson will be claimed as a child of Poseidon, and we briefly talked about Polyphemus in the context of Euripides' satyr play Cyclops, who is also a child of the sea god. So, I'm going to briefly pause from the Greek mythological side for 1 second to mention that there are actually 4 types of Cyclops in Percy Jackson lore. This is not accurate to Greek mythology, but it is interesting and will give us a reference point. So, in Riordan's extended universe, the 4 types of Cyclops are as follows. The first are what Riordan has defined as the Elder Cyclops. These are the guys we just talked about. They are the ones that were born of Gaia and Uranos, who forged the big 3's great weapons. The remaining 3 categories are Poseidon's Cyclopes, like Tyson, the Hyperborean Cyclopes, or Northern Cyclopes, like Ma Gasket and her children that Jason, Leo, and Piper encounter in Detroit in The Lost Hero, and the Southern Cyclopes, like Polyphemus, who we will encounter in this book. What actually differentiates these 3 different categories of Cyclopes is a few factors. Poseidon's Cyclopes are, notably, children of Poseidon. They work the forges with Hephaestus. They seem to be both of a greater station and intelligence than the other 2 types of mortal Cyclops. The Hyperborean or Northern Cyclopes are depicted as being smaller, more intelligent than the Southern Cyclopes, but they're still evil, sided with Kronos in Percy Jackson and the Olympians, so they're not as bright or moral, and they still tinker, but they also eat people. And then you
What a
have...
trade-off.
Yes, exactly. And then you have the Southern Cyclopes. These are largely based on Polyphemus, and Polyphemus is in fact the only example of them that we get in Percy Jackson canon. So we can assume that the other Southern Cyclopes are similar to Polyphemus. Bigger, dumber, they don't tinker or forge, and instead opt to live as isolated shepherds. The reason that this is interesting is because in actual Greek mythology, we don't have quite the same level of division, but there do appear to be multiple types. I use the language of appear specifically because it isn't spelled out nearly as clearly as it is in Percy Jackson. However, we can be fairly certain that the second race of Cyclopes in Greek myth are the relatives of Polyphemus. Unfortunately, this also means that much of the information we have on the second group much like the Southern Cyclopes in Riordan's lore, pretty much just comes from Polyphemus, who is really the only one that gets talked about in any meaningful way in mythology. So, at the time of Homer, we can read and discern that it is in fact only Polyphemus who is clearly stated to be a child of Poseidon. And in fact, this seems to be what makes him bigger, stronger, and generally more notable than other Cyclopes. The Odyssey reads in the very first book, "Only the god who laps the land in water, Poseidon, bears the fighter an old grudge since he poked out the eye of Polyphemus, brawniest of Cyclopes. Who bore the giant lout? Theusa, daughter of Phorcys, an offshore sea lord, for this nymph had lain with Lord Poseidon in her hollow caves." So, really, in this version, and the translation does change quite a bit between versions, it seems to be that Polyphemus, brawniest of the Cyclops, is referred to as strongest, largest, best, because he has Poseidon as his dad. However, we do have at least one source to attest multiple Cyclopes being the lineage of Poseidon. In Euripides' satyr play that we talked about for chapters 1 and 2 of The Sea of Monsters, we can find this line. "An east wind blew down on the ship and cast us to land near this crag of Aetna, where Neptune's one-eyed sons, plural, the man-slaying Cyclopes, dwell in their remote caves." So, is a play the most reputable source we have? No. But it was in many ways a very accurate to the myth retelling aside from the inclusion of the satyrs. Unfortunately, this bit of exposition perhaps should have been read in the happy little voice of Silas, the silly old man, because it is him who gives the exposition. So it's unfortunately very hard to determine how trustworthy this information is. Either way, it's safe to assume that this is probably the line from which Rick can say, "Yeah, most Cyclopes are the children of Poseidon in my world." But it does also leave the door open that not all Cyclopes are children of Poseidon. So to briefly step out of clear mythology and into speculation territory, putting on my
favorite
conspiracy helmet, it would seem that perhaps the biggest Cyclopes, or the best ones, the ones that get to work in Poseidon's forges, or the ones that turn out truly brutish like Polyphemus, are the direct descendants, the children of Poseidon. But if Ma Gasket, one of the northern Cyclopes from The Lost Hero, is a mother of two children, that the Cyclopes can then themselves also reproduce, diluting the godly bloodline, and perhaps even some of the other Cyclopes would then just be descended from the original Cyclopes born of Gaia and Uranos. However, not divine like the notable main three Smith Cyclopes who are named. Conspiracy helmet coming off.
I see. Hey man, I subscribe to that. That makes sense to me.
I'm glad you agree. To further cement the difference between these Cyclopes and the divine or elder Cyclopes, we can turn to Ovid's Metamorphoses, where he writes, "The Cyclopes' fields never knew the use of plow or harrow, nor owed any debt to teams of oxen," which is generally meant to say they hadn't developed agriculture and therefore were savage, less advanced barbarians. Which would make sense, since the Cyclopes were generally thought to be a motif for barbarians, outsiders that the Greeks didn't understand. And that is pretty much all there is to say about Greek Cyclopes. But before we leave this discussion off, I thought it might be interesting to show the breadth of monsters with one eye across various cultures and mythologies, because the Cyclopes are not a uniquely Greek thing. In fact, they're probably descended in their form and the way that the Greeks told stories about them from Proto-Indo-European roots. For example, there are a tribe of one-eyed people from northern Scythia referred to as the Arimaspi. Some Greek and Roman writers have even discussed them in their works, such as Herodotus, who writes, "The one-eyed Arimaspians, beyond whom are the griffins that guard gold, and beyond these again the Hyperboreans, whose territory reaches to the sea. Except for the Hyperboreans, all these nations, and first the Arimaspians, are always at war with their neighbors." So we can again see the association with one-eyed monster and violence. Thing we don't understand, other people, and one-eyed monster. Bit of a
Huh.
pattern.
Yeah.
Also from Proto-Indo-European roots is actually Irish mythology's Baelor, leader of the Fomorians, a giant with a single large eye that is said to wreak destruction whenever it is opened. And the Fomorians he leads? Yep, they're also described as having one eye and being an army of brutish, evil giants. Kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But that's just one corner of the world. As I mentioned, all of these different examples of Cyclopes come from one root, probably. In Japanese folklore, there are in fact many yokai with one eye, such as the Hitotsumi Kozu, a relatively harmless type of yokai that is said to be smaller and appear to suddenly scare people, while not actually being harmless. Which, maybe it's just me, but it is surprisingly similar sounding to Mike Wazowski, who is also a Cyclops.
That's true.
Also from Japanese folklore, another yokai, the Hitotsumi Nyudo, which is referred to as a larger creature, very, very tall. Interesting. This creature, in at least one story, tries to attack a young man hiding in a tree to watch a festival go by. These yokai are described as more mischievous than evil. So to bring it back to truly monstrous, let's talk about Cantabrian mythology, in which there is a type of giant known as the Ohankanu. These giants are described as having 10 fingers and 10 toes on each hand or foot, 2 rows of sharp teeth, standing 10 to 20 feet tall, and the, quote, embodiment of cruelty and brutality.
Jesus Christ.
And finally, because I tried to keep it short, unlike the Catabasis, I have just one more. And Jack, I saved the best for last. The Liko from Slavic mythology most frequently takes the form of a skinny old woman with one eye. It does occasionally appear as a male goblin, but the creepy old woman is creepier, so we're sticking with that. When the Liko appears in stories, it is usually to punish someone who has cheated. Not necessarily in the modern sense of cheating on a spouse, but cheated for greed. And that person therefore needs to be punished. And that is the Liko's job. This can end a few ways. Sometimes the Liko can be itself cheated or traded away to another person who's done wrong, allowing the human to escape having learned their lesson. But then there are the versions that don't end well. In some versions, the Liko will cling to people's necks, causing them to jump in a river trying to get it off. But all that happens is that the people drown in the rushing river as the Liko holds them under, and then floats off and swims to shore to chase down other victims. And finally, my favorite version is when someone cheats the Liko and then runs away thinking they've escaped. The Liko lures them into the woods, chasing after them, and the person will see something valuable. And because the lesson they need to learn is to not be greedy, they see this valuable item and they cannot resist reaching out to take it in their chase. But the Liko has cursed the item, and so their hand sticks to it. And as the monster approaches, there is one way to escape: cut off their own hand or be killed by the creature.
Whoa.
Dun dun dun. Just wait for
Whoa.
spooky season.
I know. Damn. Yeah, that's pretty intense.
So, that is Cyclopes, both in Greek mythology and as a monstrous myth across the globe.
Now, Connor, I actually was not planning for this at all, but I do have something, maybe 2 things actually, that I could add to all this discourse. Now, I
I would
have
love that.
0 sources. This is all just from knowledge that I have accrued over my life. So, don't believe me when I say this. Do your own research. But you were talking about yokai, specifically yokai with a single eye. And
Mhm.
there was one that I was really, really hoping that you'd hit on. And it is, I believe, called the Shirime. Shirime, something like that. It translates to like ass eye or butt eye, something like that. And this is a yokai. This is a real thing.
Yep, I believe you.
This is a real thing. There's this like the most famous story, at least the one that I am aware of, is that a long time ago, there was a samurai that's walking down a road at nighttime, and from behind him in the distance, he hears somebody calling out to him, "Wait, wait!" And so he's getting a little nervous. It's some town at night. He isn't expecting anybody to call out to him. He doesn't recognize the voice. So he asks, "Who's there?" And he turns around nervously, and behind him, there is a guy. He is entirely featureless, but he is adorned in robes. And this featureless man, this mannequin doll of a guy, starts just ripping his clothes off. And then he turns around and he puts his hands on the floor and then he's spreading his butt cheeks. And the traveler is shocked because where the man's butthole should be, there's just one big glimmering evil eye. So, that's kind of like a cyclops too, right? That's kind of cool.
I was expecting it to do something. I was, like, sitting here holding my breath and wait for the big evil eye to, like you
No,
know what,
it
I guess if it's
just
an eye coming out of an asshole, I don't know what I want it to do, but I think the answer is nothing.
I mean, you'd be kinda shocked if that happened, right?
I would be.
Yeah, so job done, it did it. So that's the first part. That's a little one-eye yokai that I
I
can add.
love that.
Another thing, this I will consider myth mainly because I don't know if there's any veracity to this statement, but it's a thought that has stuck with me for quite some time that I find interesting. And that is people trying to say, where do some of these monsters come from? How did people think of them? And, there's thoughts of, oh, they're explaining the natural world and phenomena or archetypes of personhood or just things that are plain weird and kind of creepy.
Mhm.
But one theory, supposedly, I have no idea if paleontologically this is true. I have no idea if there's any merit. This is just what I have heard. Connor, have you ever seen the skull of an elephant or a mammoth before?
I have.
Now, you are aware then that the skull of a mammoth or elephant looks, like a kind of a fucked up head, but right in the middle, where if it were like a giant person, there's just a big ass hole.
Mhm,
Now, we know that is where the trunk is, right? It's the same thing as our little
mhm.
nose hole in our skull. But we also have eye holes. An elephant and mammoth skull, they ain't got eye holes. They just got that one hole in the middle. So, in theory, people could have found these gigantic skulls with a hole in the middle of the forehead, or what looked to be the forehead, and thought, holy shit, there are massive one eyed people that have roamed the earth.
It's a cool idea. It's a
Which is
very
a neat
cool
idea.
idea.
Again, I have no idea if there is any actual academic veracity to that. If it is valid, it could be entirely disproved. I have my conspiracy helmet duct taped onto my head right now. But that is something that I learned along the way or heard along the way that I think is pretty fucking neat if it is true.
Well, why don't we pry that conspiracy helmet off your head and give you some facts?
Okay.
Because funny enough, I came across this origin in my research, which would have been a really cool way to tie my idea of the global myth of one-eyed monsters, evil and dark from nights untold, together. Unfortunately, there is a reason why I didn't use it. So, this origin for Cyclopes was first proposed by a paleontologist in 1914 named Othenio Abel. And Abel specifically proposed exactly what you just said, that the large cavity where the trunk connected to the elephant's face could have been interpreted as a large eye socket. Unfortunately, the reason I chose not to include it in today's episode was because most modern scholars describe this theory as lacking evidence, not because it's necessarily false, but because there's just no way to prove that it is true either. It is unfalsifiable. So,
Yeah, and Connor, that's the best kind of study. That's the best theory, is one that's unfalsifiable, because you can't prove it wrong.
it could very well be true. The unfortunate thing is that that relies on these people having dug up skulls and fossils, which are sometimes extremely well hidden and preserved. And we don't have any of these skulls surviving, obviously, once they would have been dug up thousands of years before what we have today. So even if they did have these things, we wouldn't have any record that they had these things unless they wrote it down, and they didn't write it down. But that is a popular theory from the 1900s, which I would say is definitely not that long ago. I was born in the 1900s, barely.
Old ass. I can
But
hear
I
your
did think it was a really cool
creaking and your
theory.
knees cracking from here.
I actually do have to edit that out of the podcast. I need you all to know.
No, you're gonna edit out the part where you told the truth. You're gonna leave my misinformation in, and the dozens of people that might listen to it are gonna disseminate that far and wide, and we're gonna bring it back into the popular zeitgeist for Cyclopes and where they came from.
Cool, man. I'm down for that. Let's be the
Oh, yeah.
change we want to see in the world. Let's spread
Exactly.
important misinformation.
Yeah.
It's not even necessarily misinformation. Or am I just trying to get you to misinform people?
Ooh,
Dun, dun, dun.
Connor, do you have any more myths?
I do not. That was all of them.
Okay. Well, in that case, man, I'm looking at my book right now. I'm waggling around in front of me. I am just viciously excited to continue on. I am
Oh.
so surprised at how much I have been enjoying this second book so far.
Well, I don't know, because I know you've mentioned your memory of this one is spotty. I don't know what your thoughts are on Tantalus, but because he's a one-off character to this book, I remember finding him very funny as a child.
Mm. I have no memory. I forgot that he was in this book, so I have no idea what he's into.
Fantastic. All right, then. I will hold my thoughts to myself because I don't want to influence your opinion further than that. But we are going to be talking about Tantalus next week in next week's myth section.
I can't wait.
That didn't come out as nearly as excited as I wanted it to. But we are going to be talking about Tantalus next week. So be here, be ready, and get excited because we're going to be talking about one of the prototypical stories of someone who fucked up so bad that they get their own private hell. Literally. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to support our content, please be sure to leave a review, share with your friend, and follow us on all your favorite podcast platforms. Until next time, this has been Notes from the Oracle. Okay, full disclosure. I expected Cyclopes to be my big, heavy hitter. This is going to be the really interesting one. And then Colchis Bulls just went and stole the show, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's just a really awesome, classic, epic story. Again, I was skeptical, but whoever came up with that, man, the muses were playing nice with them because
They were.
that was just fun. That was just fun as fuck. I also I know, like, nothing about the Argonauts. I have no fucking clue what they do. I've never really looked into them. My frame of reference for them was from one episode of Fairly Odd Parents where they change into they're not Jason and the Argonauts anymore, they're Jason and the Pussycats, and they sing a little song. That's it. Uh,
Fantastic.
so when you're like, "Yeah, they got Heracles and they got fucking Pollux and Castor and fucking whatever," all they're naming off all these names. I'm like, "Alright, sure." Yeah,
Yeah.
man. I didn't realize it was like the Avengers for Greek heroes.
Yeah. Orpheus is on the Argonauts.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, why not? Here's the thing. That's so weird. Is he just there for entertainment? Because Orpheus is not a hero in the sense of I'm gonna slay monsters. He's just a fucking musician.
But he's there. He's just a
Right.
hero. It's just a ship full of heroes. That's the okay, so that is the unfortunate thing. I wish I could give you more of a reason for why Orpheus is an Argonaut. The Argonauts are actually also a blind spot for me.
Mm.
I think they're just not as, like, big of a cultural touchstone, and I was actually thinking as you were talking, I wonder if that's why people feel like the Sea of Monsters is forgettable, because it is so heavily based on, yes, the Odyssey, which everyone has to read in high school, so you're a little bit, like, there, but then at the same time, you're like, "And all this fucking Jason shit is way over my head," and so you just don't latch onto it as much.
Mm. Mm.
I
Maybe,
know, it
man.
appears I've left my conspiracy helmet on.
I mean, like, that's not a bad idea. I just don't think that, like, in high school, were the Argonauts ever discussed as part of
No, that's my
curriculum? Like,
point.
I don't think so.
That's
Oh,
my point,
okay. I
is the 2 things you sorry, I didn't explain it well because I got sidetracked, but the Odyssey is taught in high school, so it
right.
makes that half of the book boring, and then you never hear about the Argonauts in any sort of modern culture or pop culture or
Oh,
anything like that. So the
gotcha.
2 halves of the book are shit you were forced to learn in high school and then are going to skim over, and shit you've never heard about and so therefore are not
Mm,
going to remember as well. You've all heard of Zeus wielding lightning or Medusa, so the first book I think is gonna grab your brain more and help
mhm.
you remember it. And like for the later novels, stuff like Atlas, you've heard of Atlas holding up the sun, that sort of shit. Like these are more well known ideas. So I think the later books' concepts stick in your brain more than Jason and the Argonauts, which you immediately are like, huh, this is
Who?
new. Yeah.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes I see what you're saying with that.
Colchis Bulls, very cool monster.